Magandang hapon po. Magpalamig muna tayo at makinig manood ng lecture dito sa Muscat. Welcome to the second of the 2024 lecture series of the Museo ng Kaalamang Katutubò. This afternoon's lecture will be delivered by Maria Asuncion Azcuna, also known to friends and colleagues as Maria Sun or Charlie, an academic in St. Scholastica's College in the fields of history, humanities, geography, East Asian and Southeast Asian, and women's studies. She is a gender rights advocate and a local travel enthusiast and a gardener. But we will hear more about Mom Charlie later when Muscat colleague Raymond Santiago makes a proper introduction. Our esteemed speaker will deconstruct or unframe the image of the Filipina, the India, or Mujer Indigena, as recorded in selected photographs from the years 1890 through 1920. Her research in this subject matter sought to establish that photographs define the subject as woman and native according to the gendered gaze of the foreign colonial photographer. But in the meantime, for those who have just encountered us, do indulge us a few minutes of your attention while we tell you who we are, what we do, and why. The Museo ng Kaalamang Katutubò or Muscat, with Unilab as our main benefactor as we pursue our mission and vision. I am Corazon Alvina. Kaalaman, knowledge, ancestral and contemporary, is at the core of the mission and vision of the Museo ng Kaalamang Katutubò or Muscat. The Museo ng Kaalamang Katutubò is engaged in collecting material culture guided by policies that conform to its curatorial direction and that ensure ethical acquisition. In its acquisition, Muscat diligently retrieves accompanying cultural data as a vital part of its ongoing task of research into kaalaman, the knowledge held in and by each object. Each object has a story to tell, its own and those who conceptualized, created, and used it in various quotidian or ritual affairs, personal or in communal situations, instigated by human or spiritual pursuits. These are stories that Muscat shares through diligently curated and ethically guided projects and programs driven by objects and their stories while maintaining the integrity of the objects within the context particular to their source cultures. Muscat tends to these through an integrated strategy: research, sharing the learning gathered through its publications, lectures, conferences, roundtable discussions, exhibitions online, and in due time, physical exhibitions, as well as social media exposure. Muscat probes for the inspiration or spiritual force behind the creation of culturally significant and aesthetically sound objects. The remarkable features of Philippine tangible and intangible culture inspire and animate Muscat's presentations. Attentive to the importance of the physical well-being of a collection, up-to-date conservation strategies, and a bespoke registration system are in place for the utmost safekeeping of every object in the collection. Muscat believes that the bonds between humans and their environment must be maintained at an optimum balance. It acknowledges the diwa, spiritual sense and essence in kaalaman. Muscat likewise believes in acknowledging the creative philosophy and aesthetic integrity, the outstanding skills, and the commitment of our artists. Muscat reaches out to people to build its community and to encourage and animate pride and affection for Kaalamang Katutubò, for our tangible and intangible heritage, for the achievements of the Filipino people then and now. As promised, here is Muscat colleague Raymond Santiago to tell us more about Mom Charlie. Raymond, please.
Thank you, Ms. Cora, and a pleasant good afternoon to all. Our speaker in this session is Maria Asuncion Azcuna, a gender rights advocate and a gender studies specialist. A graduate of AB History from St. Scholastica's College, Manila, she pursued further master's studies in humanities, majoring in women's studies, also in St. Scholastica's, and geography from UP Diliman. She worked at St. Scholastica's College as faculty, then academic coordinator for the honors program. Later appointed Dean of Arts and Sciences between 2008 to 2018. And currently, she is coordinator in the Graduate School of the MA Humanities program. She is also internal VP at the St. Scholastica's Alumni Foundation. Among her published works was Sarilaya, Women in Arts and Media, co-edited with Sister Mary John Manansan and Fe Mangahas. Her interests include Philippine history, East Asian and Southeast Asian studies. She is a local travel enthusiast and a gardener. She is a mother of 4 and a grandmother of 4. And the better half of former Supreme Court Justice Adolfo Azcuna, who incidentally is, as a court bio note describes, a seasoned photographer. Hence, in the tradition of Muscat's unwavering commitment to bringing the best and the brightest speakers to our online lecture sessions, and without further ado, it is my distinct privilege to turn over the virtual floor to Professor Azcuna and her talk on Philippine turn-of-the-century photographs of Filipina, Unframing the Mujer Indigena. Thank you.
Good afternoon, viewers. I'm Mariasun Azcuna, and I want to tell you the title of my lecture is Unframing the Mujer Indigena in Photographs of 1890 to 1920. It's a deconstructive feminist analysis of the Native woman in photographs 1890 to 1920. Now, it is an early research for women's studies in which I use selective photos from the collection of John Silva and Jonathan Best, as well as from the Lopez Museum. I had a lot of fun going through all these photographs, trying to figure out what they meant and what stories I could glean from them. But then I focused on the Mujer Indigena so I could have a different analysis specific to that. I would like to let you know that photographs, as you may know, because everybody's so fond of taking photographs with their cell phones, okay, that photographs are storehouses of images, meanings, and interpretations. As carriers of images and definitions, they can be considered as text, like you can read them, okay, to be read, reread, and reflect on specific contexts of Philippine history, society, and Philippine history and society. Okay, woman is defined according to the gendered gaze in these photographs by the foreign colonial photographer. She is formed by that gaze. The key ideas for discussion will be photography as a new technology that was invented at the turn of in 1822. It was revolutionary for its real-life depiction of persons, scenes, and surroundings. It's also a way of seeing, as discussed by John Berger and Roland Barthes. When you look at it, look at the eye, and sight is a very important sense. I think it, aside from touch and hearing, I think sight to perhaps be the most sensitive at the very start, okay? And because what do we see? How do we see? We have a storehouse of images, as I mentioned earlier, with meanings and interpretations. If you think of it, looking at this analysis that I'm doing, okay, there are three eyes. There is the eye, there is the photographer's eye, and finally, there is the camera eye. Okay. We also look at the native woman as the Mujer Indigena, who is native born, not mestiza or Chinese Filipina, not foreign born or foreign mix. Instead, now what we will do is that we will look at the Mujer Indigena in the photographs and see her as someone who can be read by way of the way she poses and the whole picture is taken. So we also discover the photographer and his definition of the Mujer Indigena. The tools of the trade would be the telon. This is the curtain that is put at the background in the Salon de Fotografía, the camera, and then the outdoor settings. What was photography at the turn of the century? And I'm talking between 1890 and 1920. It was invented in 1922, and it found its practicality because at first they didn't quite know what to do with it. Okay, it was interesting, but by 1840s, they already began to see that there could be some practical use to that photography. When we look at the photography, it has real life depiction, documentation of persons, places, and objects of interest, and it had a wide access as well as being mass-based. There were social interests also in which you had portraits, okay? You had group photos, you could now document travel, and also it was a tool of ethnography as well as surveillance, okay? The emergence of salons for portraits started appearing in the 1870s. When we look at photography, it's also good for science documentation and museum documentations, and in the more recent times, even for art. Who was the photographer? Okay. In this research that I have, the photographer is male. Okay. He is also a foreigner. And because of that, also he has the colonial eye. I can say that he was male because in all these photos, there's documentation that these were taken by a male photographer. This is not to say that there were no women photographers. There will be much later, and I don't know if there were later on we will find documentation that there were some, even in those times. But in the research I did, all the photographers of the pictures I have were male. It was also not easy to carry that very heavy camera, photographic material and all of that. The photo salon will also have eventually Filipino photographers. Not in the Then what is the colonial eye? The colonial eye would be the foreign male photographer who now defines from his eye the photos that he will take. Who was the Mujer Indigena? Well, the Mujer Indigena was native born, as I said earlier, not of the colonizer class, not of the intermarriage between Chinese and the native born. Okay, the photographs document the native born women as she dresses, as she poses, and the image transmitted by her pose. These pose can be read as text. You are reading her, okay? For this research, I chose Mujer Indigena in poses taken indoors. There are 3 photographs, outdoors, 3, and tribal women who are 4. 2 Cordillera, 1 Muslim, and 1 Mangyan. I actually had many photographs, but then we will take too much time analyzing them. When I analyzed them, okay, I did a physical reading of how the picture looks. Then I also began to document how the dress, the telon, the carpet, and the table and other things that would have been on the photograph. But it's really the symbolic that we see by way of decor and the way the pose is directed, in which are able to see the photographer defining the woman. And so who is it who gazes? It's the photographer. Okay. In unframing the framed, okay, we have ways of seeing the reading of the Mujer Indigena and analysis of the photos. Our eyes and the sense of sight, we look around us. And our sight documents and stores images which have meaning and can be interpreted. How do we see? What do we see? In photography, we preserve the present and allow future views to continued access to the past, according to Martin Berger. Roland Barthes says, a photograph is a moment in time frozen for perpetuity. And so I will show the photos uh, and the analysis of each photo to provide an understanding of the symbols. So the first photo here is on the Lopez Museum. It's dated 1890 to 1895. It's posed in a studio, and if you will look at the telon, at the background, you see carpet on the floor also, and there's a caption that says India. Okay. The woman is wearing a barot saya. Her hair is pulled tight. She has a serious demeanor, and she displays proper conduct and looks far away. So it defines her very much in the context of how a woman should be dressed, should look, and how she should present herself. In the next photo here, I actually like this photo because the composition is quite nice. This is from John Silva and Jonathan Best's collection. It's studio-based, and if you will look at the telon, the curtain behind, it's quite elaborate, okay? The lady faces the table, which is also quite distinctive, okay? She's wearing a barot saya. She has her hair up, but it's permed. This is 1901, okay? So there's a little bit of change already, okay? Her body faces the newspaper, but her eyes are elsewhere. The telon puts her in an intimate section of the home, emphasized by the table and the newspaper. Light streams in from the window and gives a little bit of light for the particular confined area. This other photo is later yet. This is in 1915, again from the John Silva and Jonathan Best collection. The telon scene is rural. You can see that it's outdoors, okay? So that was painted on the telon. There's bamboo grasses, there's a waterfall. The women are elegantly dressed, but they seem to have more pizzazz, okay? They carry watches, and they seem to display a certain self-assurance compared to the other two that I showed earlier. By then, women in 1915, women had a degree of education. Uh, uh, some were teachers and maybe other professions and the practice of other professions. But they are still, look at them, they're properly dressed, they're also properly seated, but then they look at you directly, not like the other photograph. Okay. Then I will show you the outdoor. Okay. This one is 1899 from the John Silva and Jonathan Best collection. It's outside the home. Okay. But if you will notice that it's in a small section of the Bahay Kubo, probably, okay? And it's a post photo. She is dressed for work as she would be at home, okay? She's doing a task that was done by women, okay? Pounding on the palay. And even as a young girl, she looks like she has been doing this kind of work for some time. But why is she alone? This activity was done not by yourself, no, but usually in a group. So you're wondering why this pose, uh, what was the intent of the photographer? Perhaps to show that the Mujer Indigena is hardworking, uh, and she is trained even from a very young age to be a hard worker. This next photograph is a little uh, worrying, okay? This is 1905, again from the John Silva collection. These are five women with cigars in their mouths, and this was taken in Cagayan, Tugigaraw, Cagayan. They're outside the home, okay? They're dressed in simple clothes. They are barefoot, and the ages of the women from senior to the very young girls, okay? The cigar smoking was something that was done in Ilocos and Cagayan. But if you will notice, I don't think the children were into cigar smoking. So obviously in this pose, there is uh, an intent. Uh, you wonder if there perhaps may be a phallic suggestion here. Also, if you notice, the cigars sit uncomfortably on the lips of the women and the young girls. The next photo is it's entitled "A Filipino Family Toilet." Okay, 1901 from the Lopez Museum. It's posed, and it's in the bathing area of a home. There is a definition of private space because, well, this is where you would go to clean up, and you would have big tapayans of water and all of that, no? uh the older women are still in their tapis, but look at the little girl who looks like a miniature woman with long hair and a post leg. She is nude but seen from behind, okay? What is the photographer doing in the private space of the women? He seems to be behaving like a voyeur on the private time of the women. In fact, there were many such photos that could be found of women bathing in different degrees of how much clothing they had on. Okay. There are also a lot of the what they call labada photos, lavanderas by the river, okay, where women would wash up after doing the labada. So there is also a voyeurism here where you are looking at the mujer indigena and what is it that in a private time and a private place. The next four photos are of tribal women, and they are depicted the poses are very different. Okay, here we have 1907, a photo of a tattooed maiden from Bontoc. Okay, she has earrings and a bracelet and a necklace. Okay, I think you cannot see it on this photo, but the photo displays, that's why her arms are placed across her chest because they're tattooed. Okay, so even the tattoos that she has are a form of jewelry. The pose is not natural, it's contrived. Okay, her hair is she's documented. Okay. The crossed arms will tell you about the tattoo, but also to the practice of the Cordillera women that they had no top to cover their breast. This was their natural way of dressing. But in this particular photo, it becomes ethnographic, no? Um, and it becomes a documentation. This next photo is from 1907, again, from Jonathan Best. And it's a photo taken on the steps of a traditional Ifugao dwelling. But if you look at her pose is not natural at all. Her hair is down, and usually the women would knot their hair. She she the pose emphasizes her middle, her navel, and her breasts, and a necklace hanging between her breasts. Okay, even more so, she has a cigar posed on her lips. The pose and all its elements bear a photographer's framing and intervention. This is not natural at all. The next photo is of a woman, a young girl seated. This is 1901. Um, I believe this is a photo from a friend of mine that was given at the last minute, and we thought that she came from the Visayas, but later we were able to identify her as a young Mangyan woman. Uh, if you notice, it's posed outdoors. She's on a rock that has been covered. Okay, there's a sawali background and there's a lot of vegetation around. She has been put into a pose, and if you look at her, she does not look like she feels very comfortable. Okay, emphasis is given to her femininity. She's partially uh, naked and looks natural for the photographer to put her in what you would call a nature setting. She looks exotic. Okay. So very often when you look at the tribal photos, okay, the women tend to look exotic. The last photo I have here is that of a Moro girl from Holo. Okay. She's identified in the caption and it says uh, Moro de Holo, Mora de Holo. Okay. This is 1891 to 1896, and it's from the Lopez Museum. She's a young Muslim lady. She has her anklets and her bracelets. Uh, though seated and posing, she does not indicate that she is comfortable. In fact, she looks like she's fearful. I had the photo examined by Professor Carmen Abubakar at UP Diliman, and she told me that she identifies as Bajau. Okay, so I have showed you 10 photographs, indoors, outdoors, and tribal women. Okay. Now, the women in the photos are framed by the photographer. First, you'll notice that there is a confined space, whether indoor or outdoor, whether Christian or tribal. So there is a confined space that determines where it is that you will be. Now, in the Salon de Fotografía, okay, you have the telon, and they usually have different settings. The settings can be a garden, you can have flowers, it can be elegant. One of the photos had the telon had plants and a waterfall. They create an elaborate setting for the woman, but also still confine them. They're always inwards. They're in the house. They're in the garden. They're within a found area. Okay. Even if outside the home, there are still walls to make sure the women is in confined space. Compared to male photos that you had of the same time, you will see that the men look outwards. They are about to embark on a journey, travel, or some other kind of busy activity. Okay. And they definitely have more freedom of space and movement. If you look at the pose, the women are usually prudently dressed, except for the tribal women. Okay. They're posed in a feminine way, eyes drawn away, or have a soft gaze. Okay. This is not true for the tribal women because they are set in a nature setting. Okay. The degree of their natural clothing or non-clothing is emphasized. The exotic of non-Christian women, the exotica of non-Christian women is emphasized. It is in the framing of the Mujer Indigena that the photographer, male, foreign, colonial, casts his gender gaze on the Mujer Indigena and defines her. He emphasizes her femininity, a degree of passivity, and a confined space. There is also the intrusion on her private space in the photos of the bath. With the tribal women, there is a different gaze. They are framed in a nature setting and projected as exotica. If we can frame, we can also unframe and reframe, which is actually what I did with the analysis of the photos. We identify how the gendered gaze has defined the Mujer Indigena. Within the framing, we examine our history, our stories, the social context of Mujer Indigena, and our history speaks of women who were not passive at all. In fact, they were actively involved in community from way back to the time of this research. We have the babaylans who serve the spiritual and healing needs of the barangay. There were women who supported and helped the farmer husbands, women who fought Spain like Gabriela Silang and others, mothers like Teodoro Alonso who made sure that their children, and in particular we think of Jose Rizal, grew up as correct as good citizens. The young women of Malolos who spoke out in the public sphere for education. The women of the Katipunan who were active participants in the revolution. The colonial eye using photography aimed to be a tool of surveillance too, by documenting and keeping an eye on the occupied territories by the American colonizer. In challenging the framing of Mujer Indigena, we have unframed her and worked over ways to a new knowledge, and we have, in a sense, reframed her. So this is the end of my lecture. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Dean Azcuna, for a most interesting and insightful talk. Yeah. I appreciated your lecture immensely because I myself an amateur collector of used photographs, old
Yeah.
photographs, vintage
Yeah.
photographs. I came to a lot of them recently, most recently. And I would like to, with your indulgence, begin with the question and answer portion. We would like
Yeah.
to invite our listeners, our viewers, to send in their questions through the comment section of the Facebook page. And we will provide the questions. We will forward the questions to Dean Azcuna. Okay. Can can we begin, ma'am? Can we start?
Yes, please.
Okay. Ma'am, first question is from Miss Neni Santa Romana. Nanonood po siya.
Yes.
Okay. Santa Romana Cruz. Okay. From your study, what were the most startling insights for your gender study?
I think what the first thing I began to notice is that passivity in the earlier part, no? Because this is framed 1890 to 1920. It's a cusp of time. In that cusp of time, you had the Spanish occupation was already ending, and you now have the Americans who are coming in. Okay, and so you begin to see how is it during the Spanish period there is really a certain passivity in the photos compared to the photos that later on that appear in the American period.
Mhm.
Okay, also found that the photos, the ones, because this is not the only one, no, the one of the cigars. I just particularly chose those for this talk. I have several, no, that the cigars are so uncomfortably placed. So you wonder what was the purpose of that photograph? That was contrived. That's not something that's just normal, no? And there are plenty of what we call labada photos. And then, that they're outside of the bathing area. They are within the bathing area. The photo I showed you and the ones by the river, okay?
Yes.
If you don't, at first I could not understand why so many labada photos. And some of them are taken from far away. So, voyeur pa nga talaga yung photographer. Yeah. So, then I realized, that's what's happening. Because I remember that the cameras that they had were not as sophisticated as what we have, no? They were heavy items that you had to work out. The other thing is the documentation of the photographs of the indigenous people, the Cordillera people. It's really documentation, eh? Okay? Parang they take them one by one, and the definitely they all look different. I had other photos yet, but I didn't put them anymore. For example, one photo that I had is two young women, okay, where again there's a certain amount of uh, nudity, no, and they are smiling. So you're wondering also, why would you smile if you're posing like that, you know? So
Yes, yes.
you can really see how the photographer has defined how the pose will be.
Yes. Ma'am, to follow through on Miss Cruz's question, for what reason kaya were these framed this way? Was it to what was the point?
There,
Will you speculate on?
no, first, remember that there were the photos taken in the salon, okay? In the, in
Yes,
the those are posed for. You want to take your picture, okay? But when you take the
yes, yes,
picture, the photographer defines, even today, if you go to a wedding, it is the photographer who defines how everybody will pose. But in this case, if you look at all these photos of the women in the photograph, they are dressed very prudently, okay? The cover up here, the camisa is high, okay?
yes,
They are well combed always, okay? The dress is quite long. The space is confined. Other photos that I have, for example, they look out into the garden, but there is still the fence of the garden. So it's always for the women, for those urban women, okay, you would say, there is a confinement of space. There is the definition of how they should look, okay, and very in the early part they're all looking down, but later on in that other photograph I showed you, which is 1915, they're looking straight at you, pero
yes.
still there is all this uh um discreet, uh very organized way of sitting and of looking out. The
Pero
other
ma'am,
Yeah, the other documentation kasi is the Cordillera women and the indigenous people, the Muslim
yes,
women in other parts. And they were considered exotica because remember this was new to the Western world. Many of these photos would be sent out. Aside from photographers and uh, what uh, uh, what you would call photographers who documented for science or for museums or for the authorities, no, you also had soldiers who were here and they would also take
yeah.
photos. So those photos have found their way also into the collectors everywhere. Yeah,
Yes.
Mr. John Silva would make cuento that in the States they have fairs for these collections.
Yes.
And when he allowed, he gave me permission to look through his photos and to select the photos. He had boxes and boxes of them. So I had
Yes.
to choose specific to my research. But there are all kinds of photos out there also.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Some more questions, ma'am.
Yes.
One question from home is that were some of the photographers identified?
I have a list actually of photographers. In some cases, yes. In some cases, no. Okay. Um, uh, some of them it's written at the back. Okay. But very often the photograph does not have.
Mhm.
Uh, you there is an estimate of time. Okay, that's why for example, there are photos that I tell you it's 1892 to 95 because when I went to look to search and there were references to them that this is probably around this time. But not all the photographs, unless it was taken in a salon, would tell you who the photographer is.
Okay.
May I say
Uh,
also that there were the photographers who documented, you know who they are, of course. But for example, there were also photographs of wartime, the Spanish-American War, the Revolution, the Filipino-American War. Those ones, they all have their names.
Okay. Ma'am, what about to follow through on that question, documentation on the studios or the salons?
There's one, Per Tierra Studio. And I remember there's another one of a Filipino. He's called the first Filipino photographer, Felix Laureano, who
Laureano.
he was from Antique, but he left for Spain, came here and opened a studio, but went back to Spain again, no?
Spain.
So there were a lot of foreigners who opened actually studios here. I want to share with you something I just found out the other day. There was a Swiss national, Rosier, who was sent here from Singapore to take photos of the Taal volcano in 1859. So, but of course, he took other photos than just, but it's just a fact, no, that how interesting that he was sent here just to take photos of the Taal volcano. But at that time, I think Taal was active, so they wanted to have documentation of that.
Mm. More questions, ma'am.
Yes.
From Stephen Sorbito. Who were the most difficult to take photographs of? Was it easier for photographers to take photos of the men, or were the women easier
I think it was
to
easier for the
handle, to
women
manage?
because there's confined space. The men were also, there were lots of, this is not to say that all the photos were women, no? Or there were very few men. There are lots of photos of men also.
Yes,
Lots of photos, even in the studio. I think
yes. I
this,
noticed.
oh
Mm,
yeah, because the idea, it's real life. It's not a painting. So the documentation is
mm,
that interesting that you know how you look
mm.
and you can keep it on top of your piano or hang on the wall or whatever. There are many photos of men. There are many
Yes,
photos of women.
in place
But
of a
I think,
painting.
oh, yeah, very different from a painting. Uh,
Yes.
the for Philippine photography, the one they say this is the one that she looks. I'm sorry, I didn't post it. It's the oldest photograph uh, that was found actually on files of the South Pacific in a French museum. And yet That was Filipina, huh? She was a Filipina. So I think in the same way that you like to take, because there were most of the photographers were men, so they like to take pretty women. And then, diba?
Yes.
My husband keeps doing that all the time. He likes to take my picture. But I think in truth, the women perhaps also like to have their pictures taken, again for posterity and for sharing with the family. If you notice that photo I had of where the light is streaming through, the lady is very pretty. And then even her dress, and then you dressed up. Of course, in the salon, you could also try on clothes. No, if
Yes.
let's say you did not have fancy clothing, there were clothes that you could put on. But very often, naman, their clothes they came with proper clothing. I don't think in this case you did not have farmers going to the salons.
Yes.
It's not something that uh, they would be documented, but the farmer would not come to the salon and have his picture taken.
Yes.
Uh,
I can imagine because it will cost a certain amount to have your picture taken.
yes,
It's not as if this is a must type of I think it was a privilege rather that
yes,
to have your picture taken.
yeah. You have to go specifically
Okay.
to the studio, and then
Yes.
you have, well, of course you have to prepare yourself and all that. That's why all the photos, the women always look very nice. As I mentioned, that one of 1915, the women carry watches already. Wala pa yun,
Hmm.
yung Spanish period, walang watches.
Mhm.
American time na yun eh.
Okay. Yeah. More questions. A question from Muscat. Was there an intention with the women the women with bare breasts and unclothed to serve erotica? Uh, are you familiar with the work of Sue Salazar on the
Yes,
topic?
yes. Well, yeah, when you look at the photos, okay, they're very often young girls.
Yes.
Okay, this is not to say again that there were no senior women. Okay, yes, there were, but if you see them, they are in a group. It's
Mhm.
a grouping, no? But every time you had young women, the photos of bare-breasted women, they're usually young girls,
Mm.
not older women. So it's documentation, but it's also a form of erotica. But then
Okay.
you can say, I'm a photographer. This has very good intentions because it's documentation. And remember that their their poses are not like Playboy naman, no?
Mm.
But the emphasis of the arms over the chest, no?
Mm.
You can see, and even the what they do with the feet, no, how I showed you that particular photo, which I think was a very contrived photo because she will fall off the stairs with what they made her do with her legs,
Yeah.
and they put a cigar pa, and they don't
Yes.
wear, they don't wear the they don't wear the necklace like that in between the breasts. They don't do that. So that was it had another purpose in doing that photo.
Okay. Ma'am, as a follow-through, I have two or three dealer friends,
Mm,
people who buy and sell photographs, and they will swear that the pictures of naked girls,
yes,
the ethnic girls, the Katutubò
yes,
girls
yes.
who are unclothed, carry a premium.
I can
Uh,
imagine. Yeah.
for that purpose, then, ma'am, would
Yes,
you?
and look at them, they're so young.
Uh,
If I may say, they have very perky breasts.
okay. Okay, thank you. Ma'am, we have a very important question here. This was posed by Chief Justice this. You told us he was at home. He took the time to write us a question. Whose handwritten descriptions are in the photos?
Uh, some it's the the photos taken by soldiers.
Uh-huh.
There is something written behind.
Okay, okay.
Yeah,
You
there's
will
some of them, no?
annotate it.
But I have two photos. One says India in front, no?
Mhm.
Uh, and that was on the Lopez Museum. It just identifies the caption right away identifies her. So I didn't even have to say that she is a Mujer Indigena because they already say she's India. And the other one was Mora de Jolo. Okay. So again, it's a caption that's already defined. In the personal collections, you would have uh, messages behind. You would say, it would
Yes.
also say who it is,
Yes.
who owns that photo. Uh, but you have the photos of documentation of like Dean Worcester, okay? Dean
Mm.
Worcester was here in the 1880s, long before the Americans had occupied us, no? And already he was obsessed with taking photos of the tribal people.
Yes.
And even later on, when he finally became, I think he was Secretary of Interior, these were the photos that he was very, he liked a lot.
Yeah, he was very keen on accumulating.
Yes, yes, plenty, plenty. And then there were, of course, you know, there are several names kasi that come out, no?
Mhm.
And the photographers are all male. Later on, when you have travel photography, okay, and we are familiar with that now, we like to take pictures of all these places that we go to. There
Yes.
are two women that are mentioned because the other photographers who were also involved were Thomasites.
Okay. Apo.
These
Yes.
teachers, male and female, who were
Yes.
sent to different parts of the Philippines. Some of them, two names were, I came across two names, no? Were also, but this is much later. It's not in the scope of my research. Started also to document their own perspective. So you can imagine how their photos would be as compared to that of the men, male
Mm. Mm.
photographers. Yeah.
Okay. Ma'am, a follow-through question on whether or not it was difficult for a male or a female subject to be to pose or to take the pictures of. Um, what about the photographers, ma'am? You have a theory on why they were mostly men, and I suppose there were women, but what with the scant documentation that was
Okay.
available?
I, I came across this particular line in a newspaper when I was researching at the Lopez Museum. But I have not been able to follow through on it. Because it's a newspaper, it says that there was a woman photographer on one of the ships that was out there during the Spanish-American War. It was
Mm.
just one liner, nothing else on that. But because a woman photographer, really? That I kind of jumped at that
Oh,
fact, no? But I have nothing else to support it. But I just wanted to let you know that I came across that line. Maybe if I devote more time to that.
yes.
But why are there more men? Maybe uh, they like the fascination of how to develop the pictures. You know,
Mm.
first it was on glass and mirrors. Later on, it's only much later that you have paper. So
Mm.
maybe this may not have been very attractive to women, uh, but we don't know. I mean, most probably we can still see it because later on, women are also photographers. But maybe
Yes.
the initial stages, it could have been cumbersome, how to do it, so that not too many women were involved. And then you needed someone to carry your stuff also.
Yes. I was supposed to say kanina na, pero even the photographers ni mo, ma'am, they hired out the carrying of their their
Yes.
equipment to to
Oh, yeah.
assistants.
Yes. And that's why also it would take so long.
Mm.
Now it would be interesting to find out who the assistants were,
Mm.
because
Mm.
the assistants may have been Pinoy.
Yes, yes. Oh.
Kasi
I was told, I think it was Mr. Best or Mr. Silva who mentioned that at the turn of the century they were all foreigners. And the Filipino photographers only came out at around 1910, 1920,
mm-mm.
largely to open up shop here in Manila to take
Yes.
photographs.
Yeah.
Ma'am, on a more personal note, we have a question from Jerome Punsal. When did your interest in analyzing archival photographs begin or start?
It's because my husband started to do photography.
Okay, okay.
And
So,
then we had photographer friends. And
mm,
then we met John Silva and
mm,
Jonathan Best, who were
yes.
so much into this. So I was very interested in the history part, really, because when you look at the photos, there is something more than just the picture. You I did not mention anymore in the
Mhm,
talk, no, but part of the part of the research involved um, dividing the picture into fours so that you
mm,
could really analyze it more closely, what is in the photo. Okay. But that's because it was research and you have to, so I didn't want to do that anymore when I gave the talk now, no. But it's so interesting when you look at the telon. Okay. When you look
yes.
at the clothes that they have,
Mhm,
uh, there were many things that you could look at, and if you look at where the picture or the photo was taken, uh, how were they dressed, even the clothes, no, where you actually have an insight into the context of a certain time and a certain people and a
mhm,
certain surroundings.
okay.
So
Ma'am,
yun.
question to follow through on that observation.
Mm.
Why were the women not smiling?
It takes long kasi before the picture is taken. That's why they're all serious. So, if you smile,
Okay.
frozen na yung smile mo.
Uh, magaganda naman, ma'am, yung nagpapakuha, di ba?
Yeah,
Sayang hindi sila
siyempre,
nakasmile.
oo. Pero, there are
Every
look at that second photo I showed you. How pretty the lady there. Ang ganda-ganda
mm,
niya yung second one eh.
pero hindi siya masyadong nakangiti, ma'am. Talagang
Oo, talagang
very serious
seryoso.
silang lahat. Oh,
Seryoso.
okay. Ma'am, another question sana, more personal question.
Yes, yes.
Kasi what is your take on, I've encountered photographs even from Mr. Best's collection. I've seen
Oo.
some of his stuff. Ma'am, what about this predisposition of Filipinas to wear costumes of literally costumes of other indigenous communities? Like I saw one of Mr. Best's pictures. Ma'am, ang puputi nila, probably of Spanish descent. Pero ma'am,
Oo.
they chose to have their picture taken with the bontok costume.
Kasi
No?
exotica nga eh. It's always exotica. Can you imagine? That's why look at that the young maiden, no, from Bontoc. She
Mhm.
has her earrings and her necklace. How
Yes.
ganda-ganda, and then her hair is in a knot on top of her head. Okay. The Mora, for example, she talagang ninenervyo siya. Siguro she was also nervous about the camera taking her soul, di ba?
Mhm.
Ninenervyos sila sa ganon. But she has her bracelets and her anklets.
Mhm. Ang laki
So,
ng anklet niya.
oh, well, pag titignan mo, ang ganda-ganda. So they dress differently. They certainly their outfits that they have, no, and even I guess they how they behave,
Mhm.
because they were foreign. They considered they were seen as foreign women. They were not. They could not associate them with the Christian lowlander women, no? Iba sila eh. Oo.
Okay. Ma'am, of the same import, what about pictures? I've encountered some also. In fact, I have in my own collection. Ano ma'am, they look like sophisticated women pero they're more predisposed to wearing Filipiniana. Like they would have the salakot and the basket, and then
Yeah.
they would wear the kimono, and it seems to me they want to present themselves as uh, tunay na dalagang Pilipina because what
Dalagang
about the
bukid.
kind of, oh, dalagang bukid, yon, tama kayo doon.
Because it was a fad. It was nice. Not too long ago, I remember my mom she has a picture like that when she's dressed in the parang patadyong,
Yes,
okay?
yes, oh,
And then
yeah,
and then
marami
if I'm not
ma'am.
mistaken, she has a basket. Kasi tunay na parang dalagang bukid nga.
Yes, oh, oh.
It was it
Yes,
was
may laman pang gulay,
acceptable.
ma'am.
It was
Okay,
acceptable
okay.
na they wanted to have that kind of photograph taken.
Okay. Ma'am, another question ngayon. We seem to have tapped into the sensibilities of mga kasama ko sa Muscat. How was the photographer, do you think, how was the photographer able to overcome the resistance to being photographed when most indigenes felt that a photo taken will take away their soul?
Well, that was
Uh,
really very difficult. So usually they would bring in someone who would talk to the people muna. That's why when you see them,
mediator.
of course, someone from uh, probably also Igorot, no, or Muslim or from the indigenous people, no, the tribes. Someone someone has to talk to them and make them feel comfortable. That's why in the other photos that you see of groupings, parang they are not they are what's the word for it? Fearful. They're
Mm,
fearful. Someone has to calm them down and let them realize that you will not lose your soul once the picture is taken. In fact, I remember a story I read where after the picture was taken, they went to the camera, the men, okay? They went to the camera and they were kind of kicking it around and to see
mm,
if it would react. Of course, it will not react. No, it's a
mm.
but they had to test for themselves. Ano kaya ito?
Yes, a
Mm.
foreign object.
Yes, oo. Baka sisipa pabalik eh.
Okay. Baka lalaban. Okay.
Oo.
Oo. Uh, so you believe, ma'am, there were intermediaries between
Yes.
the foreign, okay.
Oo. You cannot just go there.
Oh,
Uh, First of all, baka you'll get beheaded pa.
oh,
But,
may
so you
headhunters pa na noon.
kailangan may intervention talaga. Merong tao na kakausap sa kanila. And then, usually, well, the ones who would be tapped to intervene already had some kind of friendly relationship also. But
Mm,
always, meron ganon. Oh,
okay.
mm.
Ma'am, another question, findings ko din ito dun sa mga bunch of photos that I have. Um, were you keen on documenting where the studios were located?
I read two books. One was by Ben Vergara, and
Mhm,
I forget the other one. Okay. In fact, that person, the family name was Pertierra,
mhm.
and my cousins are Pertierras.
Okay.
I have a I have an aunt who married a Pertierra, but we were
Okay.
not. I always wanted to find out. I still have not found what is the connection.
Okay.
But yes, you had studios in the city, no, in Manila, okay.
Yes.
But you also found them in the provinces, a small one.
Yes.
Really
Oh,
a
yes.
small, and it was a kind of like a tradition that you went and had your picture taken. Usually may little horse pa that you ride on
Yes.
the horse.
Oh, something for the children and something for young women. Nasa
Yes.
background nila yung ano. Yes,
Oo.
yes.
Pero yung telon talaga is so interesting. I mean, if I were to do another study, I would do a study of telons. Kasi
Mm,
iba-iba. Ang gaganda ng mga telon. Although I don't know how many are still around. Baka hindi na
Mhm.
makita yung mga telon na yun eh.
I have yet to see, ma'am, an antique, 100 years old to 120 years old, maybe less than 100 years old, na actual na telon. I
Oo.
have
Yeah.
not seen that is something na, I've seen old cameras, I've
Mm.
not seen yung old telon.
Oo.
And it surprised me, ma'am, kasi I found some photos na Mabalacat, Pampanga.
Oh, okay.
Tapos Iloilo. Uh,
Yes. Marami sa Iloilo.
oh. Tapos ma'am, there was one in Davao. Yun.
Mm.
So it appears they were all over. Sometimes ma'am, uh, uh, Dagupan, yun. You'd be
Oo.
surprised that at the turn of the century, meron palang mga studio sa. Of course,
Yes.
majority were in Manila. It seems
Oo.
magkakatabi sila,
Oo.
magkakapit
Pero
bahay. Okay.
meron sa probinsya. In the bigger towns, meron yan.
Mm, mm. Okay. Ma'am, another follow-through question from how they wanted to be framed, the subjects.
Yeah.
Were in your observation, were the subjects, syempre merong mga sophisticated na gusto nila uh, ang photos nila dalagang Filipina, native girl from the province.
Oo.
Was there any documentation have you encountered in your readings na middle level or less than affluent uh, members of society na magdadamit naman sila naman ng magara para they
Hindi,
come out as affluent,
hihiramin nila yung
o
damit sa
yung mga
studio.
damit ng studio.
Oo,
Okay.
yeah. That's the purpose of that. In the same way that now when you go, you have these Korean costumes. Okay?
Yes.
But in this case, wala naman silang masyadong magara na damit, no?
Mhm.
So the studio would keep a supply of clothes that you could rent and then
Yes.
use it for the photography.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have yet, ma'am, to encounter a collection of old clothes na galing sa isang photography shop. I've never encountered. I don't know if you've seen anyone collecting
Old
yun.
clothes.
Yes, from a photography shop that was rented out.
I don't know. That would be interesting also to look into. Yeah. Yeah.
What styles and what ano they carry.
Yeah,
Okay.
because what clothes do they have?
Okay. Ma'am, question following Jerome Punsal's
Yeah.
inquiry. Do you yourself personally do you maintain a collection of old vintage photographs?
I like
Are
to
you a
look
collector by any chance?
when I come across, I take a picture and I keep it on my file. So I've been having
Okay.
a couple of old photos, okay? But I wouldn't say I'm a collector. I'm just interested in how they look, especially family. You're able
Yes.
to draw many stories. The photographs kasi are not only images, no? They're also stories. That's why that definition by Martin Berger, where he says, you have the past that you can look in the future, you can look at it and it stays there, that you can keep it on and on. It will not get destroyed, no? So the past keeps on being reviewed in the future.
Okay. But no position to accumulate berries to you, like hindi naman related sa family nyo, but rather something you've encountered in a sale, in a fair, in a antique, in your travels abroad. If you encounter Filipina na material, you're not predisposed to keeping old photographs.
I have not really encountered, well, you know, a friend of both Cora and I, si Marian Pastor Roses, has this exposure to all of this
Yes.
Filipiniana that's in all those museums and whatnot,
Yes.
There are some that are very unique and they're not even displayed. So what sayang naman, sana makita natin, no? Because always you wonder, first the workmanship is so excellent, no? And then they don't do them that way anymore. There are so
Yes.
many things, whether it's swords or spears or
Or
statues
hats.
or what. Ang dami, ang
Aba.
dami-dami. Wala, hindi na ganun. Or even the weaving, no?
Yes.
There are changes through time. Well, it's nothing naman stays static. Change is really the story of our lives. And to be able to have these things, sana naman pwedeng ma-display. But then there's that project where they have documented, and then you can what's the word for it? You can see it online or something like that, no?
You
So,
can you can view it online.
oh, that's nice. Oh. And it's also a source of pride. Uh, for example, now, no, like my mom, she was as a young girl, okay, there she is posing in a patajong and a basket, okay. I think after that nawala naman yung ganyan, walang gustong mag-post ng ganon. But now,
Yes.
because the terno has been revived and there are so many ways of showing it off, more and more women are using terno, uh, the terno
Yes.
jacket, no, or the terno dress. Of course, some of them are very, very fancy, but it has received good reviews among people that they want to use it. They're proud to wear the terno again. Mm.
Ma'am, wala na pong mga nagtatanong. I
Ah,
guess you've answered all the questions.
yes.
Would you have a message for our viewers, for our listeners, uh, regarding, say, looking at photos, or, well, you're not a collector.
Yeah.
Ano, keeping an eye, or if people have collections, how should they look at it? Would you have a
Well,
message or an insight for them?
I think precisely nowadays we're so fond of taking pictures because the cell phone has made it so much easier. Uh, and there are different ways, even how to make it brighter, etc., and all of that.
Yes.
In fact, I take good pictures with a cell phone, not so good with a camera. So I may be typical of many people who are good with the cell phone, and therefore document everything. I mean, before, who documented food? Now, before you eat, people document how the food looks like.
Okay.
I
Yes.
like to document my plants and my
Okay.
flowers. That I like to do. But I also like, what's interesting, kasi when you look at old photos and you examine them, no? There really are stories to look at them.
Mm.
Parang you can draw out stories from photographs, and I think more and more people are beginning to think that way and appreciate it, no? So photography has also come into a different uh, perspective, no? You have, of course, the masters of photography and their cameras and all of that, But you also have now, it's so easy now for ordinary people to look at photos. And I know that the other thing, for example, that you can do is you can do like they do videos, short videos, again with the camera. And that's from the cell phone, huh? So there's a lot, there's plenty yet to happen out there. And I think, the Jeronimo Berenguer de los Reyes museum is going to open again,
Okay.
I think, no? So that was one of my first exposures to big photographs. So that when you looked at it, wow, titignan mo lahat ng detalye. I remember when I would bring my students, I would point it out to them, no? So they began to look at the photos in a different way. So it's a good way to also teach young people to appreciate what you can see in old photos.
Ma'am, did you have to study to appreciate the details in old photographs?
Well, I had to appreciate photography. And well, my husband was very happy to share whatever knowledge he had of photographs. No, so I carried that with me when we would look at photographs. But then there's also history, and since I'm also a history teacher, I like what is it that the old photographs display. When even as a gardener, what are the plants that you see in the background? Things like that, there's really plenty to look at. Open your eyes, open your mind. Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. Ma'am, any final or parting words before I turn over the
Yeah.
floor to Miss Cora?
This one is first to say thank you to Miss Cora for inviting me and being a resource and mentor, a resource person mentor to me when I was doing this research. To John Silva and Jonathan Best, who were so unselfishly lent me so many photos. And to a good friend, Marge Vasco, for her support and help when I was doing this research. Thank you very much. Thank you to the viewers also. Thank you, Mr. Santiago.
Okay. Most welcome, ma'am. Now,
Thank
I'd like
you.
to turn over the virtual floor to Miss Cora
All
for
right.
her concluding remarks.
Okay,
Thank you,
thank
ma'am.
you. Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I can hardly be seen. Oh, there I am. Bad photography. No, anyway, thank you very much, Maria Soon or Ma'am Charlie, as some people would like to call you. I had a lot of messages about asking whether this would be beamed, streamed, recorded, posted elsewhere. Marge Vasco, for instance, Karina Bolasco, they were both asking. And Emily Tionco, were you on already? And you're right about photographs. You can read them, which is what we do here because you can read so much. The one thing that has always that I've always thought about is when studying photographs. These people are dead. Most of them are dead, and they are not identified. And the other question, not quite related, that I always keep is all these ladies, all these girls naked. Where they photographed with their families around. But of course, the notion of nakedness was different from there and now. No, they were not really naked, especially those that wore tattoos. They
They
did
were
not
not,
look at that as nakedness. And so, as Zeus said, Salazar, that the eroticism was on the eye of the beholder. The ones who looked at
Yes.
the naked pictures, they were the ones who made them into erotic objects. So, but more than that, there is, as you said, there is so much to read. There's so much to close up. For me, what the digitization of photography has brought is the ability to make it large in some big screen, and so you can look at it very closely as opposed to what was printed. But again, the printed photograph by itself is actually an artifact. And so that's another way of looking at it. All the processes that went into photography, printing, silver, sensitizing, all of those. They're all knowledge, but I think that very few actually look into them as necessary now in this in the field of photography, the way it has developed these days. Anyway, I've said so much. Thank you again, Maria Sun, for telling
Thank you.
us how telling photographs are. And to our communities of friends, participants, and various audiences, thank you for being here for the continuation of Muscat's 2024 lecture series. We hope to see you in the coming months or days for more exciting presentation. May I invite you to our next lecture quite soon because of certain constraints on April 24, and it's a face-to-face. For the first time, we have been allowed to do a face-to-face lecture. It is with Mr. Cloud Tayag. It's going to be adobo tasting. That's on April 24 here in the premises of the Bayanihan Center in Unilab. In the meantime, Muscat continues to celebrate Philippine culture, and we invite you to join us. Please go to our Facebook page for announcements and follow and like us on our new Instagram account, Muscat IG, and our usual YouTube and Spotify channels. Keep safe and well. Till soon. Thank you very much. This is Cora Alvina.
Thank you.